Yeah.
Want to minimize that and go to your.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. We're ready to start?
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the June 7th, 2021 work session. Ms. Wagner, roll call, please.
Mr. Dorr?
Here.
Mrs. Evans Proctor?
Here.
Dr. Howard?
Here.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the June 7th, 2021 work session.
Here. Dr. Weston?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here. Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Just a quick note that tonight's meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, and during sections 105 and 1001, which are public comments, we will open a Zoom room to be able to accept comments from remote participants. You will not be able to watch the entire meeting on Zoom, but can offer comments at those times. And you can find the Zoom link on the home page of the district website. And I'd like to thank Mr. Ganesh and his team for getting that all set up, and Dr. Weston for advocating for that Zoom participation. With that, we'll move on to section 1.03, the approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Section 1.04, I will turn over to Dr. Kolar for special recognition.
Joined Montgomery County Schools this spring in hosting a high school unified sports track and field team. The team consisted of 15 athletes and partners, one team manager, a head coach, and an assistant coach. The season began in late March with team practices after school twice a week and then 3 track meets before the end of May. The first meet was away at Mcguire, and the other 2 weeks were held at home in our Thomas J. Keenan Stadium. The season was a great success, and Coach Whitman shared, the unity we had as a team at that first meet was just awesome. I think for all of the athletes, it clicked that this was competitive and exciting. Ms. Whitman heard over and over from the athletes, I'm having so much fun. All of our athletes partner relays that day did better than our personal bests from the first 2 weeks of practice. The coaches expressed how proud they are of the students and how proud the students were of themselves. The camaraderie on the team by the end of the season was magical. The district wishes to recognize all the student athletes and partners participating on the unified sports track and field team this year, along with the coaches and team managers. Thank you for leading the district forward in areas of equity and inclusion. Our team members were Colleen Beal, Brandon Savette, Sean Kim. Sandy Kohler. Ethan Kohler. Andy Lyle. John Ayers. Alden Zing. Madison Schweitzer. Zachary Shem. Madison Schumer. Paige Wilson. We'd also like to recognize team manager, Casey Burke. Assistant coach, Mrs. Camaro. And our head coach, Ms. Witt. If you could proceed to the hallway for a photo. Thank you all so much.
We're going to take a brief recess so the board can go and congratulate these athletes and get a photo opportunity, and we will be back within 5 minutes. If you're on YouTube watching us, don't turn off.
I know. Are you
White and airy dress.
That's right.
I was
I was just gonna say, where is yours?
Go with my eyeshadow. Yeah. I wouldn't. I'm trying to finish kind of like finish here with that girl tomorrow. I'm in your wedding. Really list.
Okay.
We'll tell we really.
I'll put that on my list for Friday.
For the right along the lines of following up.
How long are you gonna be?
I got 42 minutes.
I'm telling you, give them a five.
It was set.
You know what? I have to do that every.
It got up to like 85 degrees.
Oh, gosh, and you got a nice bigger office and a quieter
I mean,
space.
I'd rather be where the action is. Back.
Yeah, there's
And I
no
don't-
action where I'm at.
And I don't need your issues. Including enrollment. What do we got going on?
Now is the moment.
Oh, I get. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there, and I thought, hey, listen,
I need someone like that.
Really nice.
It's nice most of them came.
Hi, welcome back, everyone. We're moving on to section 1.05, comments on any topic. At this time, we'll take public comments. We'll start with those that are here, and if anyone is on Zoom, raise your hand and we'll take a comment from there after.
You got it? Okay.
Got it? Okay. Start by stating your name and your municipality, please.
There you go. Hello, everyone. My name is Edward Mcguire. I'm from Perkiomen Township. That's the quick prepared remarks. First of all, good evening. To all the members of the school board, the administration, the teachers, as well as the community broadly, I thank you. Collectively, we have persevered through a once-in-a-lifetime crisis, which impacted every member of our community. Everyone has paid some price for this pandemic, and for some, the price is everything. I speak tonight against the loudest voices in the community, which focus on perceived mistakes and their own grievances. So to them, I say, you can only see the trees and not the forest. And I can't think of a better example of that than the celebration here tonight of the Unified Track. And I have to say, if you look around at the accomplishments of this board this year, you can't say logically or honestly that much wasn't done. Therefore, in light of the gravity of the moment, I again wish to thank you all. To the teachers, the administration, and board, I give my compliments for continuing to serve admirably at an undeservedly thankless job during a period where being merely thankless would seem to constitute an improvement. We have seen the best and worst of our community during this crisis, and we've learned a great deal about who we are and what we can be. It is hard to imagine a year ago, and even 6 months ago, being here today, heading into a summer, which looks increasingly like those which came before. Now we move forward to a new school year intent to build upon the hard debated and often painful lessons the pandemic has taught us. We may never return to normal, but we remain hopeful to grow and improve and possibly become even better than we once imagined. In closing, thank you all again for your tireless work every day to manage against and through this time in history. Please know that this community you serve respects you, supports you, and is forever grateful for your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mcguire. Do we have any more public comments from those present tonight? Seeing none, Mr. Ganesh, do we have any comments from Zoom participants?
I don't see any raised hands.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to section 2, reports. And we'll start with 2.01, the safety report from Mr. Miller, please.
Good evening to you all. Thank you for having Mr. Weaver out here this evening to go over the safety report. We've covered a number of topics here this evening. As a cursory coverage for you and for the community to understand some of the different projects we have going on, some of the effects that we've had throughout the year that have certainly been challenging. No other recognition other than that, but we're here because of our purpose to keep our kids safe and to keep our community comfortable in our school, especially by the comments this evening. I believe we've accomplished that, although it's been very challenging at times. I want to give thanks to Mr. Weaver and Mr. Clemmer specifically for making my job and the things that we're doing in this year, especially in a challenging time, much easier. It's a great assistance to me and to the board and to the district as a whole. So we're going to go over several things this evening. Obviously, our purpose is to review the safety policies and some of the things that we have done this year. I wanted to let you know that our operations plans that we're required to do, both at the state and local level, have been accomplished this year. They are on file. Additionally, this year, our emergency operations plan, which is an energy generating station for which we are in the response area, has been updated. We will be drilled on that a little bit later in the year. We'll touch on that as we go through this. We have worked through safe to say reports this year, obviously considering the circumstances we were in. Those numbers were down a bit, but still, all in all, we were able to provide assistance to those who provided information to us about our students and to a greater sense to the community as well. We updated and kept in contact with our local law enforcement agencies and had those MOUs updated. We have shared them for those who requested it. In fact, just today we pushed out a right to know request for those. So we're working in cooperation with those who are inquiring about those needs. And as directed this evening, we'll present the safety report to you. So our emergency operations plan, as I mentioned, with the county is up to date. And some of those things require us to do emergency drilling. And even though we were in different kind of learning environments this year through the hybrids, and then we'll finally get back to having full attendance, and we were still able to accomplish the completion of these drills, although on a modified schedule. And the Department of Education, the Pennsylvania Department of Health, and other agencies that regulate those things did allow for that. And we allowed great latitude to our teachers and individual classes to adapt to those environments so that we weren't violating any social distancing or causing any other concerns for our students or our staff. So we're very thankful that we were able to accomplish that. Some of the training that went on this year, obviously the training Dr. Russell, so some of the training that went on this year was with our contracted vendor APC, our security team, who have done a fabulous job. I can tell you that through all of this, they have been very vigilant. They have created more and more relationships with the students here in the schools, and I'm very happy to see that occurring. Students have come to them with concerns. They've come to them to share their accomplishments and to speak to them on a number of issues, and that's very comforting to me to know that we have that avenue of communication with our students. But throughout the year, we worked to make sure that all of our security agents met the state criteria before the deadline, so that they were trained up into the standards that were required to uphold. Along with that, some of the staff were also given CPI training. Excuse me. And that was done here in-house with Agnes Roth. And I want to thank Dr. Boyd for making that happen. So particular topics that they covered this year include a number of issues on de-escalation. So when a child may be in crisis or upset, they might be the first person they see. And it was very valuable for us to see that connection and that they were able to help in that regard. We're continuing to build our threat assessment team. That also has been led by Dr. Boyd. We currently have approximately 17 staff members trained in that. It's been a cooperative effort with the Montgomery County IU, who have provided this training for us free of charge, so we can continue to do that. We will. We've been able to secure some online training.
Can you check to make sure the microphone's on?
Any better? Yeah, the microphone's on. We will. We've been able to secure some online training. Better? My apologies. But again, our threat assessment team has been working through training opportunities, and we were just recently indicated through the state that we can use online resources, which will save us time out of the classroom with those who are in the learning modules that are being presented to us. And then finally, our trauma-informed approach to education being led by Ms. Smith continues to be built upon, and we'll meet that deadline as well going forward. Some of the safe schools funding that we're traditionally used to getting from, especially the Commonwealth, has come to a standstill. That is a legislative process that has been of great concern to a number of us in school safety, but it's been supplemented, fortunately for us, in a number of these acts that you see advertised here on this graphic. Mr. Weaver and Ms. Hurd have done a great job in securing those funds and processing those. And we continue to look at grant opportunities, both public and private, that fit our needs. And we continue to hopefully secure some of those as we move forward. But for now, the state money just isn't there and will probably not be released anytime in the near future. Mr. Weaver's going to touch for a few minutes on the Safe to Say reporting that we've done in the last year as he oversees that project.
Thank you, sir. So as the board will recall, Safe to Say is a software platform that was set up in 2018 as part of the state's initiative for better, more information to assimilate as we go forward with a comprehensive safety plan, essentially focusing in on our student body as a means for gathering information and disseminating it. So we had another successful year, although that it was much lower in capacity over the past couple of years, simply because A, we were not in school due to the pandemic, and when we did come back, we came back in different sizes and structures, and I think everybody was just trying to get along. Now that we've been back in since March 22nd, we have seen an increasing rise of our Safe to Say tips. Those are broken down amongst the buildings, the 7 buildings that we have there. And unfortunately this year, with all of the information going on, we actually did have a couple of Safe to Say tips that were not TV related. However, when the people in Harrisburg, when they collated everything, they decided that it was a TV issue. So we unfortunately had to spend some time on some issues from Safe to Say that were not directly related to working with our students. However, we were more than happy to help with that. At least that tip, those tips in particular, were fashioned out with a little bit of labor associated. Unfortunately, there is no other way to show this graph in the different colors and the different cuts of what our tips were for the year. Again, from July 1st, 2020 through Friday, June 3rd, 2021. And obviously, we had some issues associated with bullying, cyberbullying. As the number 1 component, we had some inappropriate language, behavior gestures as second place, and the pie chart breaks everything down associated with that. The total of 78 tips. Again, typically we are probably closer to 200 tips on a yearly basis as this continues to be understood from the staff and the student population throughout the buildings. And I think that the administrators are doing a pretty good job of advertising, keeping this first and foremost in the minds of our students if things do happen. And so this particular portion of the presentation tonight is the significant part from a statutorial perspective that we have to get this information out there and do it in a public format. We included the base survey information from last year. Just to let you know, obviously the base survey is every 2 years. So we are getting ready in the fall of 2021 to take it. We left this information in here because it was a significant portion of conversation for last year. And we brought it forward and left it there. And we'll have updated information when we do this report next year. There are a couple of different slides that show that. The last piece that I have is injury or workers' compensation associated with our self-funded group, the School District's Insurance Consortium, of which Perkiomen Valley was a founding member back in 1979. And we have various kinds of accidents associated with our employees, 14 in total. And again, this is also a little bit lower than what we've had simply because staff was not here or here without the other students at times, or working from home. So I will hand it back to Mr. Miller.
One of the questions that came up throughout the year that Dr. Russell had asked me to touch upon was our dropout numbers as it related to the pandemic and whether or not we would see a spike or any kind of change in those numbers. So for the last 4 years, we just kind of put a spreadsheet here for you with some numbers, the number of students versus our population. You can see our numbers are relatively consistent. We have a bump up to as high as 12 and then back down to 3. But we're not seeing a significant spike. I did speak to counseling to ask them, and a lot of these students are already on the radar, if you will. They're already receiving assistance. They're already trying to work through some of these processes. So that's one of the things to keep our numbers relatively low. One of the comments that was made by our counseling staff is that as they go through this and as they identify these problems that the students have, they work to engage them in such a way to foster a relationship with them so that they can work through this problem where they feel like they must leave school. And they've done a number of things to do that. They work not only with the student, but with the student's family, and even oftentimes with their peers, depending on the kind of assistance they truly need. And if they cannot find a solution, in the end, they do have some ways in which to encourage these students to find a place where they can feel that they fit in, whether it's in the workforce or otherwise. Some of those programs are offered here in our community. Others are federally funded. You'll see Micro Works, which comes through our Montgomery County IU. The Gateway program through our community college, which has done a fabulous job across the county. I know in speaking with my colleagues, they have a tremendous relationship with them as we talk to them about these processes that are in place. And then the state and federal programs, whether it be the Job Corps or the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. So we are aware of who these students are. We do our very best to try and engage them long before we get to this point. But there are some that feel that it's better for them to move on into other things. And that's, thankfully, as I said, keep my numbers down. Just a couple of updates about some of the interactions we've had around the community. We continue to keep our requirements under Act 44 up to date. They have been changing a little bit from time to time, and we work to make sure that we are in fact compliant. We have conversations almost monthly between the districts. I represent Perkiomen Valley. Mr. Weaver serves as our backup, and we talk with all the other districts about these right things that are going on in hopes of making sure that we can all cooperate and exchange that information, especially with our career centers such as North Montvale, even the Western Center, although we don't participate there. There are very close neighbors. We've had a lot of interaction with them. I have made inroads with a number of our response agencies and set up tours and information for them to come through our buildings. We have several of our state troopers that have been through the buildings on a regular basis and have tried to make inroads with our students, just to engage them in conversation. So it's nice to see them on campus when we don't need them, so to speak. And we've had a lot of good feedback about their presence. As I mentioned earlier, our MRUs were renewed, and we're continuing as we work out of the pandemic and back to a more normal circumstance with our County Department of Public Safety for some tabletop exercise to engage our administrators and some of you if you wish to be a part of that. Some of the things that we did this last year was in addition to your request of me to increase the surveillance and options that we had in the district. We did complete a number of those. Thanks to Mr. Weber who's here. He led a great deal of that, and now we're working with another member of IT who's taking over that, Mr. Penglades, and we are getting them done. In fact, just last week we had 6 new views attached to our screen, so we're very happy with that. We've increased the number of and the presence of security in our elementary schools with the elementary patrol that we started. And again, the elementary principals are really reporting back that they're very pleased with that as well, seeing those people in the buildings, just checking on things and, you know, making a second set of eyes on things that go on around the building on top of what Mr. Clemens' operations staff also do. As I mentioned earlier, our threat assessment team has increased. We have a couple projects still underway. Our wayfinding and mapping of district buildings will continue this week. Our traffic study, which began, I mentioned at the last safety and operations meeting, that has begun. We're about 2 weeks into that. We're hoping to get some preliminary ideas back from Gilmore and Associates very soon. I continue to find my way here in the district in different things that come up, whether it be at the request of Dr. Russell or certainly through our principals, as well as Mr. Regan when it comes to the safety say. It's a lot broader. I think Mr. Regan would agree. We initially thought, but that's okay. I don't mind. I would much rather be engaged in these things that are going on. So we've had very good luck with these different challenges that we have faced throughout the year, and I'm thankful to be able to be here doing this with all of you. And finally, our Safety and Operations Committee, we meet on a regular basis, not only with several members, obviously, of the board, but also community members that bring expertise to the table as well in their respective fields, or simply information as a parent, or even as students that we've heard from time to time. So we're very thankful for that. It has given us a wide variety of information from our stakeholders, and we're happy to move forward. So again, I just want to extend my thanks to Mr. Reader, Mr. Clemmer, and again, Dr. Russell and all the board for supporting the initiative we have here, and just offer my personal congratulations to our graduates. Wish you all the best. And I'll take any questions. Yeah.
The wonderful signage.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller and Mr.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
That brings us to section 202 in our student liaisons report. And before I turn it over to Ms. McGovern, I just want to say on behalf of the board, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to you and to Mr. Smith. You have been liaisons to the board during a time like no other, and we appreciate you continuing to report on what's going on from a student perspective and for offering a student voice during board meetings. To Ms. McGovern, we wish you the best as you move on and continue your education at Penn State. And Mr. Smith, if you're out there watching, we wish you the best as you move on to your senior year and beyond. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. McGovern.
Thank you. I think the board as well. It's been an honor to serve for as long as I've gotten here, and I will pay off. But before I leave, of course, I'm going to talk to Earl for a minute. So just there's a few things going on in the district. Seniors do graduate on June 11th, so that's something to look forward to. We recently had our new class officers elected at the high school, and our school board representatives as well. And the future one is sitting right there. And that's really what's going on in the district. But there was something that I wanted to address, and that is that June is the month of Pride Month. It's a month celebrated in June each year to celebrate the LGBTQIA+ community and honor the Stonewall uprising that happened in Manhattan in 1969. And I know we have a lot of LGBTQIA+ Vikings out there, whether they are out or not. And I'm sure as many of you are aware, there was an incident that occurred at Middle School West that I just want to touch upon because a lot of students have questions, and obviously it's my job to try to answer those questions from the board's perspective. And to refer to what I'm talking about, there was a day at West where what I've heard from different students in different accounts where different students were bringing their pride flags to celebrate the month, and other students heard this and planned a kind of protest of sorts with Make America Great Again flags and Trump flags and things like that. From what I've heard, this was all planned on Snapchat. People post on their stories of something to bring. I do have an account that one person got a baseball thrown at them, and that there was verbal and other physical harassment as well, like we slurs and things like that. I've heard from different people that, cops were there and cops weren't there, and because of the confusion and the rumors, I think the students would really appreciate a statement of some sort, some kind of clarity, maybe from Dr. Russell or the administration, on what happened and the level of protection and severity regarding the safety of our LGBTQIA+ students, because that's something that's very important to them and to their allies within the district. And additionally, the school board has put out many statements in the past regarding its dedication to the protection and safety of our Black, Indigenous, Hispanic, Asian, and other students of color who have experienced and live and will survive the real world and its current events. And I think our staff, our students, and our community members who are part of the LGBTQIA+ community will not only feel heard and seen with another statement from the board, but also more protected if action is taken now and in the future and always to protect our LGBTQIA+ guardians, who we all know deserve a safe space in this district. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. I'm sure you're definitely aware of it. But from a student perspective, I think a lot of us are wondering what's going on, if we are safe, if they're part of that community, and what's going to happen under this profession, or what future policies that could be put in to protect our students. And once again, just thank you for everything. It's been a pleasure to serve on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGovern. 2.03 is the President's Report. I have no President's Report this evening, so I will turn it over to Dr. Russell with 2.04, the Superintendent's Report.
Thank you, Mrs. Evans-Brackett. So I have 2 points that I would like to make this evening. One will reference graduation, as Ms. McGovern did, and a second is a message to our school community as we prepare to conclude the 2021 school year. So as Ms. McGovern mentioned, this year, graduation is Friday night and again in the stadium. So last year, if you recall, we had a drive-by graduation out in the bus circle. And this year, the plan is to once again resume that outdoor ceremony. We have 444 graduates that will be presented to the board. They have met the requirements and are preparing to participate in the ceremony Friday night. Dr. Moss has thought very carefully about some of the mitigating measures that are still in place per our health and safety plan, and is affording families 6 tickets each. So we'll see how that goes. That will afford individuals on both sides of the stadium some space, some social distancing. And we are asking that all attendees wear masks. And I'm requesting that everybody does a sun dance instead of a rain dance because it could be difficult. At any rate, we're very excited for our graduates as we approach Friday night. We've got a couple of board members around the table. Dr. Hallis, Mrs. Lofton, are looking forward to having some graduates this year. So congratulations in advance to your kids. So I would like to read a message. I have broken my message down by paragraphs really and incorporated some visuals to help bring to life some of the words that I would like to share. The 2020-21 school year has been a year like no other. While we've heard this reference many times before in a number of ways, the stories, challenges, and successes of it are important to note and even archive. We've learned a lot about teaching and learning and of ourselves. The innovative ways of navigating how to do school have made a lasting impression on our practices. The camaraderie and giving nature of so many in our community during such difficult times has been inspirational. The uncertainty, fear, anxiety, frustration, and divisiveness that have also come and gone over the course of the school year are not unique to Perkiomen Valley. However, there is hope and a diligence among our leadership team and staff to promote healing and resume the normal operations in the high-quality manner we know for the benefit of our students. Our district's mission is to cultivate inclusive school communities and empower our students to grow intellectually, socially, and emotionally. While the 2020-21 school year was conducted in a very different manner, our mission remained the same. As we cultivate inclusivity, we more frequently include our special education students in regular education settings and expose them to appropriately rigorous curricula with their typical peers. We have made great strides in this regard with increased integration and overlap of our special education and regular education worlds. We will continue on this journey, forging ahead with a deep and passionate commitment. Inclusive school communities also stands for all of our students feeling welcome and safe. We continue to enhance our positive school-wide behavioral systems and supports, look to implementing more restorative practices, school counseling services, mental health resources, and activities to facilitate reconnecting with one another. Our summer programming at no cost to the community has invited many to participate, and we're excited to provide these opportunities. I applaud our staff for their dedication to high-quality teaching and learning this year, on-site, in a dual delivery hybrid arrangement, and/or in a fully virtual setting. They are doing impressive things with modern resources these days, and in their efforts, every student mattered. I celebrate our teachers, paraprofessionals, technology teams, support staff, food service, maintenance, and custodial, and administration for the steps forward they have taken in doing school differently, and also in considering and including all students. Our district was fortunate to be able to provide every student who lacked one a device. This afforded equity of access to the educational opportunities offered this year. In our schools and classrooms, our teachers have been focusing on equity, inclusion, and diversity. They have taken bold steps forward as we diligently work to improve the experiences of all students while paying careful attention to the diverse populations we serve. Teachers have conducted diversity book audits, increased co-teaching partnerships, reviewed curricula and resources to ensure they are up to date and inclusive of diverse voices and individuals that have contributed to where our nation is today. We strive to promote a positive sense of identity and afford all students role models that they can look to as they experience learning. Our staff are serving as equity advocates and learning from equity consultants as together we cultivate inclusive school communities. I want our staff to know that I see them, support them, and applaud them in these efforts. We are a team when it comes to this work that can prove extremely challenging. Thank you to all of our staff for all that you have accomplished this year. We continue to promote student voice. Despite the distance that sometimes existed between us and our students this year, their voices rose to be louder, and we listened. Some of our students shared the positive aspects of their school year, while others offered constructive criticism for improvements to learning and their social settings. The Safe Collective students deeply impacted our thinking about what needs to happen in our schools to improve the experiences of all. And all means all in Perkiomen Valley. I am committed. We as a district are committed to leading in ways that eliminate any negative or marginalizing experiences. I stand for promoting parity among all, and our staff do too. This is what Perkiomen Valley School District stands for. This is what our work this year and into the future is about: cultivating inclusive school communities, creating safe spaces, and empowering all students. During the course of the pandemic, I am thankful for the community partnerships we strengthened or forged. We are working with Ursinus in a variety of ways that serve to support our staff and also our students through professional development, mentoring programs, environmental studies, and higher level coursework. We have partnered with LATO, Life After Trauma organization, for support of our staff, students, and parents on ways to cope during the trying times of the pandemic, and Integrate for Good to assist our students in identifying their strengths as they pursue employment. Most recently, we have partnered with the Perkiomen Watershed and 4-H Center on developing the Lenape Arboretum Muhlenberg Woods. Power Packs continues to provide much needed food to our community, as does our own food service department. These efforts will continue through summer and all next year. Our community has expressed appreciation and thanks in response. The PV Foundation continues to provide significant funding in support of innovative learning experiences for our students. And our parents provide a variety of perspectives, assisting the district in meeting the diverse needs of our students and the school district. I invite community members to also be partners in the conversations about what we stand for and why we strive to cultivate inclusive school communities that empower our students. Opportunities to engage exist in one-on-one or small group settings with me, or as part of the Education and Wellness Committees or PV Partners for Equity and Inclusion meetings. Look for information about upcoming meeting dates for all of these groups. As we think about the future of our schools and our students, we recognize that our graduates are entering a world that is becoming even more flat and growing more diverse every day. We are dedicated to facilitating the teaching and learning that guides our students to becoming critical thinkers, problem solvers, and knowledgeable of other cultures and other people's stories. We are including and empowering our students. The world they will enter as they begin to experience their future beyond Perkiomen Valley will invite complex conversations, questions and issues related to the current pandemic, inclusion, diversity, race, gender, orientation, and identity, all of which lack simple answers. The intention of our work is to create greater awareness, develop deeper understanding, respect, and empathy for all in our schools and community. This has been a tough year, and we're almost through it. Thank you to our students, faculty, staff, and administration, parents, Board of School Directors, and community for your dedication and grit. Your support and your feedback all assisted us in serving the interests of our students and getting us across the finish line. Well, almost across. What do we have, 7, 8 more days? Some of us are counting, unfortunately, but I found this statement. It was on the cover of Ed Leadership, and I thought it captured some of the thinking and the messaging that I would certainly like to communicate. In our schools these days, at this time, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Wishing all in our community opportunities to re-energize, rejuvenate, and reconnect this summer. And please stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Russell. Moving on to item 2.05, the solicitor's report. Mr. Superintendent,
The only thing I would report is that PD issued guidance on June 4th indicating that in addition to the health and safety plans that the board is working on approving this week for the remainder of the school year and this summer, the district will be obligated to develop, host, and provide 2 PD plans for next school year. And the district administration is aware of that requirement. It's a requirement to, in order for you to access the elementary and secondary schools relief funds pursuant to the American Rescue Plan. So it'll be different than the prior plans, and we're still waiting for a template from PDE. And it's not due until July 3rd. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Supers. 2.06, board and committee reports. Do any board members have anything to report on any committees? Most of our committees are wrapped up. I do have finance on my calendar for later this week. Are we doing that, or are we? Finance, I have it as June 10th, but
There is no finance committee.
okay, we canceled that meeting. Okay. I just want to report from a legislative. I think most of us have been getting the email updates yesterday and today. So as of this afternoon, 2 bills had moved out of the Senate Education Committee and to the floor for consideration. I haven't seen any updates since then, but these bills could significantly impact public education. This is the time when all education bills are being closely monitored by PSBA, PASBO, and others, as the fear is always what will ultimately end up in an omnibus school code bill. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on these, but if you haven't read the information from PSBA, make sure to look into it. There's Senate Bill 1, which amends the public school code to provide significant modifications to charter school law. The most significant flaw with this bill is the creation of a new statewide authorizing committee, allowing charter schools to make an end run around local taxpayer control and diminishing any chance to ensure that charter schools are accountable and responsive to their local communities. It also does not address any of the critical need for charter funding reform. It doesn't include any financial reform of the charter school tuition calculation. And there's also Senate Bill 733, which amends the public school code to create the Education Opportunity Account Scholarship Program for exceptional students, which is the latest iteration of a school voucher program. It gives a false impression of seeking to help students with special needs, but in truth, this proposal will have negative impacts on the student population because with its implementation, it will take funding away from public schools. In addition to these items, Governor Wolf is holding a press conference in Harrisburg tomorrow morning to advocate for significant funding for education, funding $1.152 billion that he wants run through the Basic Education Fund formula. The legislature is currently grappling with whether all or just a portion of the funding should be run through this formula. And then on Thursday, June 10th, right here at PV High School, Representative Joe Cerisi will be hosting a press event to urge the legislature to fully implement the education fair funding formula as part of this year's budget. And he's proposing using the American Rescue Plan funds to ensure that no school district would lose money from this change. So there's a lot going on right now with it being budget time in the state, so make sure you're paying attention. And with that, that takes us on to section 3 in the consent agenda. Items that represent standard routine business of the board are included in the consent agenda. Board members may request to have any items removed for discussion. The consent items as of June 7th, 2021 are listed below. Additional agenda items may be added to the consent agenda during the work session. Are there any questions on any of these? Okay, section 4, education. Dr. Kolar, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Suggs-Brockett. Item 4.01 is the education update, so I'll turn it over to Mrs. Smith. Good evening, everybody.
Happy to advance for you. You might want that.
Thanks.
Okay.
More topics for you this evening. Real quick on field trips, we'll talk about the Viking Academy, which is our virtual school, enrollment and staffing, and then we have some ones that we heard a little bit about this evening. Annually, we report to the board on the field trips that we have done. You will notice that the list is much shorter than it is in previous years, but we did want to highlight for you the field trips that we have gone on and that our staff have attempted to. Some of our students participate in things virtually, so you'll notice a couple virtual, as well as we did have the new school trip to Orlando and the senior trip to Fishing Park. So again, just part of policy that we annually let you know what some of those field trips are. But I wanted to share a little bit about Viking Academy, and this is the new name or branding that we have for our virtual school here at Berkeley Valley. Anywhere, anytime learning is the vision statement that we had developed a couple years ago prior to the pandemic. And I want to thank Dr. Clark for her creativity helping create the logo that you see on the screen. We've seen this before as well. As you know, we've been talking about this for quite a while, pre-pandemic, and then even more so with the pandemic as we plan for next year, about just really having our own virtual school and what the benefits of that are for our district residents. So we did update our numbers last month, or at least in Education Committee, we shared the survey results that were sent out to our families to see what they were intending for next year for their mode of learning. And you'll notice on here, the numbers went up slightly. We got close to another 500 responses from the last effort that we sent out to families who we've not heard from yet. You can see what our anticipated enrollment is next year. We're still missing, maybe 300 to 400 of our families in terms of this, but we're getting closer. And you can see in the far right, the number of students or their families that have options for virtual. So our highest number right now is sitting there in 5th grade with 16 students. Not the numbers that I think we had initially thought that we may have when we presented probably a month ago to you, and certainly not comparable to the number of families that are currently either in PD virtual or in virtual with 2.0. So that's good news, right? Most of our students want to come back, and that's exciting. So some of the follow-up is we are attempting to determine the intentions of those other about 400 families to see if that impacts our numbers. We are preparing for those asynchronous options that we have talked about, whether through our partnership with the Montgomery Virtual Program or with our own staff, considering that. We are also continuing to explore options for synchronous learning. We know and believe that that is certainly best, particularly for our youngest learners who may need to be in a virtual environment. But as you saw on those enrollment numbers, we don't necessarily have the number of students to have a full class or to justify a full-time teaching staff being assigned to that. So we're not anticipating fully virtual teachers right now. We'll see what those numbers continue to look like. We are looking for how might we be able to partner or creatively provide synchronous options, but continuing to explore asynchronous as well. So what is our rollout plan? There's a whole other piece of this, and those are our families that are in cyber charter schools, and we've shared the financial information with the board several times, and we really want to see if we are able to market our Viking Academy and maybe bring back some of those students. Add to that our students who would like to continue virtual, and maybe those numbers will then be able to have classes. So we are working on a cyber school comparison document where we're putting together academic performance data of the most common cyber schools where our families attend compared to Perkiomen Valley academic performance, as well as what their program offerings are. Are they offering asynchronous, synchronous, or a combination of them? Mrs. Baker, our STEM supervisor in curriculum, has really been managing the virtual students this year and their enrollment, so she's been helping with a lot of this. Dr. Parr has assisted us in revising the website to have the logo and more information about what we're moving into next year with the Viking Academy. We are working on a handbook that would address similarly to the school's handbook, grading, attendance, all those practices, and what does that look like in the virtual environment. Talking to our registrar about what the registration process looks like for that, set up in synergy, working with the technology department and all of our child accounting to ensure the accurate accounting for attendance and so forth. We're also identifying roles and responsibilities, who will be overseeing this, who's looking at the grades, the progress monitoring of kids and so forth. And then we are also making sure that our internal stakeholders are aware of what is Viking Academy K-12, what are we offering? Because most often families might be reaching out to a teacher that they knew, or their building principal, or their school counselor to get that information, and we want to make sure that they are aware. As far as the marketing plan, we are looking at our current cyber school students, and we've broken them into two groups. The group of families who just enrolled in a cyber charter this past year, probably most likely as a result of the pandemic. And we are actually going to be surveying them this week to see if they are already intending, maybe they've made different plans and they are intending to return to us on site. If they are, however, intending to continue to look for a virtual option, we want to reach out to them first and try to, procure them back to come to our own Viking Academy. We will be having an email go out to all families that are in cyber charter. That will go out this week. Dr. Farr is assisting us with a physical mailer, a postcard that will go out that will be advertising some parent nights, using some social media, and then both Mrs. Baker and myself will be making personal phone calls to all of our cyber charter families. Our goal is by Tuesday of next week to have reached out to all of them. So within the course of a week, they should get an email, they should get a postcard, and a personal phone call from one of us. We're also working on some videos and testimonials. We have a very supportive, smaller group of parents of virtual students this year who have really been pleased with the education that their children received this year. Would like to see those synchronous options continue. They've been giving us some testimonials, sending us some pictures, a little video clips, so we're hopefully able to put that together as part of our marketing campaign. We do have informational events scheduled. June 17th and 22nd are the dates we will be advertising. We'll be offering some daytime and some evening options, both virtual and on-site. Again, for those parents of cyber families that may be interested in learning more about Viking Academy, to see if, again, if we can have any of them return for the hours. So I'll move on to enrollment and staffing. These slides look pretty similar. You've seen them, over and over the past couple months, these updated numbers. The kindergarten registrations as of the end of last week have grown a little bit since where they were a month ago, but still on par with what we had anticipated. The elementary enrollments still look very similar. We are still projecting the ability to reallocate 4.5 positions out of the elementary due to those declining enrollments, which we anticipated seeing. Remember that 4.5 though does include the one virtual teacher that was a temporary position this year. We actually net 3.5 out of the elementary. This one looks slightly different. I do want to point out one or two things here. This is the middle school. Last month, what you would have noticed was that we had a large change to our 6th grade enrollment. We looked at our actual 5th grade and which buildings they were going into, and it's very skewed this year, which we shared with you last month, with 242 of those students moving to East and only 154 moving into West. And last month, we had projected the possibility of having 7 sections down at West because that's a much lower number than we've normally seen. After meeting with Mr. Creedon, Dr. Boyd, Mr. Moran, we really put our heads together to think about how might we move that to 7 or should we keep it at 8. Knowing that it is a Title I school, knowing that we've just come through the pandemic and there may be additional needs, as well as it is a transition year, we believe it is best to keep the 8 sections there. It's relatively comparable to East. Although again, it is a Title I school, so it is certainly normal to see a smaller class size in that particular area. As well as with teaming, the middle school concept of teaming, anytime you change a team, kind of starting over and rethinking about the curriculum you teach and getting that dynamics of the team. We'd like to keep the teams together. However, we recognize that this trend continues and we see this continued gap in the enrollments. We know that we'll need to go down to 7 possibly in the future. And then our high school numbers really haven't changed that much at all. We continue Dr. Malcolm her team work on scheduling and so forth. So you've seen this slide before. It looks very much the same. We have a net total of 4.5 positions that we can reallocate. And we had those anticipated staffing requests. You have board approved those already. We've been posting in Ms. Moran and the administrators. We've been in quite a bit of interviews lately. So it's a net of 2.5 positions added to the budget, of which Mr. Weaver has 6 of them included. And you saw this slide last month as well, so just kind of reiterating this. The 6 new positions are on the left. The middle are the 2.5 positions that we are reallocating from within our current staff. And then we have over here on the right the 2 positions that you have to this point board approved for us to advertise, the counseling position as well as the supervisor of health and wellness, which is an administrative position, which will either be in ESSER or COVID rebuild fund. Last month, you saw on this, those other blanks were filled in by virtual teachers. Because at that point, we were talking about if we thought we had the numbers to justify that we would be able to use some funds to secure some virtual teachers. So we did remove that this month, just based upon the numbers. Certainly, we'll revisit it as we see those numbers change, but right now, not anticipating. And then rolling into the ESSER funds, just a quick recap here, about $227,000 through ESSER 1, which was allocated for our non-pubs, for some consultants, and a large majority of it went to Chromebooks and then the employee assistance program. ESSER 2 was close to $872,000, and again, a large portion of that went to Chromebooks and technology items, as well as summer programming. All the lift stuff, the remediation and enrichment we budgeted initially there in ESSER 2. We just recently received that we will be getting a funding adjustment. That's normal with federal grants, Title I, 2, 4, we usually get an adjustment, and you notice it went up for us, so then it went up to $85,000. And then ESSER 3, we're close to $1.8 million. We have some recommendations for you to consider and discuss this evening. This is just a reminder of ESSER 3. It certainly is a result of the pandemic. One of the changes in this one is there's a requirement that 20% of ESSER 3 be allocated for what is deemed as learning loss, which, in our definition is really those things that we are doing to help students to remediate or regain or recoup maybe some of the skills or just additional practice or even enrichment for them. So there were lots of ideas presented. We had both a wellness committee meeting, finance committee, and education committee in the last month where ESSER was one of the topics on the agenda. And this really is just a list of some of the ideas that came up through many of those meetings. Some of them we already have in place, like the enrichment activities, some different programming, mental health resources I'll talk about in a moment. And I'll point out the water filling stations. If you were at wellness, that was something that came up, and Mr. Weaver has shared with us. We actually have some in storage at West that we can use in the district. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about mental health supports too, so that you could see some of the things that we have done, whether it's been through ESSER or other funds. You have approved 2 additional school counselors at the secondary level. We have a social worker in our high school who right now is somewhat shared doing social work and career counseling, who is going to be reallocated or reassigned next year to be completely working on social work. So that's an addition in our mental health services. The supervisor position. We also continue to work with outpatient mental health services, and we have all of the summer programming, remediation, enrichment, as well as community ed. Something that came up at Education Committee was, what types of things are we doing to reunite the community, to come together and have activities? And, you know, thanks to you, our community ed programs are also free to our district residents and opportunities for that to happen. As well as the employee assistance program, which was new this year, which we hope to continue into future years. We certainly could consider some other things. You heard tonight about some, programs and how successful they have been. We've had LATO, Integrate for Good, be a part of the conversation, other things we could consider, renewing some of our agreements or partnerships with them or other organizations should you want us to explore that. So what we will see in the board agenda for some thought and discussion is we'd really like to hear your feedback on what we've put forward as some recommended allocations, and I'll talk about them, some of them in a little bit more detail. Learning loss, again, has to be 20%. So that's, we've calculated that to be $358,000. That could be our summer programming. One of the recommendations you will notice is we are recommending to reallocate that. We have it budgeted initially at ESSER 2. We didn't know we were getting an ESSER 3, so we would like to move that into ESSER 3 because it meets that requirement of the learning loss piece and have that in ESSER 3, which frees up some money in ESSER 2. The staffing, we talked about the administrative position of the supervisor of health and wellness and 1 counselor. We have right now, earmarked a portion of that to include their salary and benefits for the 21-22 year out of the ESSER. It certainly could be through COVID reserve funds. Mr. Weaver can talk more about the accounting pieces. We also then, because we know that this is one-time money, and so we want to be careful in terms of with staffing, and we would eventually have to have that staffing be assumed in the district budget. You'll notice we saved or earmarked $165,000 to be able to have the administrative position covered through ESSER for a second year, which just gives us a little bit further in our budgeting before we have to assume that into the district budget. We believe, due to our declining enrollment and the trend we've seen, that we will be able to have the counseling position move into the district budget after 1 year through attrition of positions. And then the last 2 items are really the big items, ticket items here, flexible seating and interactive whiteboards. This was presented at Education Committee as 2 kind of bigger ticket purchase items that without funds like this, we typically would not be able to implement something to this size or this particular scale. And so we are recommending using a large portion of this. You can see a little bit towards flexible seating, but a large portion towards the interactive panel. I'll come back to that in a moment. ESSER 2 would then, if we move forward with those allocations and recommendations, we would need to adjust the ESSER 2, which again, we have to do anyway because the amount has changed. We would move the summer programming out of there, and then we would take the balance of what was left, plus what we have budgeted, and put that towards the ESSER. That leaves close to $1.3 million between ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 to put towards the interactive panel. We have 400 classrooms K-12 through, we looked at the math of the different positions of staff that we would want to outfit. Again, being it one-time money, this would be a wonderful opportunity to make a purchase like this and move forward what our classrooms look like, which otherwise would take us, a significant number of years, and probably till we got all of them done, there'd be a completely new piece of technology, kind of change our path. So interactive panel, you may be wondering why these are, that whiteboard, the per se, that you think about maybe from our classrooms, but that's interactive. And there's actually one behind Dr. Russell back there. I don't know, Mr. Ganesh, if he pulled it out for this reason, but I was happy to be there. So, obviously we're not using it this evening as an interactive tool. It's more of a projection tool, but they have the ability to really provide interaction for teachers as well as students to physically engage with the device, as well as to connect to different devices. So those of you with devices here, you could actually project and throw up on the screen what it is that's on your screen and what your individual work was, so that other students could see that and you can interact. We have done a lot of discussions administratively about what a model classroom here at PD or what we want it to look like. We want it to be flexible. We want it to be interactive, to foster those 4 C's, collaboration, communication, and so forth. And this would be a tool that we would love to see in every classroom for our students to be able to interact with. They actually come with their own operating system now, so it's like its own computer. It doesn't need to connect to another device. It certainly can, but it also is a standalone computer, pulls up the internet, so forth, any operating system that we have connected to it. They can be mounted in the classrooms, which is what we would do probably in most of our classrooms, but there may be an opportunity to keep some of them on a stand. I believe some of them fold down so that you can actually have kids come around the table and, maybe we're dissecting a frog virtually, and we can actually see that on the table in front of us and kind of maneuver things together. So lots of opportunities available. Mr. Ganesh and I have been talking, should the board be supportive of something like this? We would like to work with a vendor to secure a quote and then have a 1-year phased rollout where we would have certain classrooms completed, maybe by the start of school or by October, another step by January, and the final step in the spring. Again, without this funding, this would take us many, many years to be able to do it. But we believe we could do that in 1 year if the vendors are able to fulfill our orders, depending upon how quickly we can get out. We would certainly have to work with Mr. Weaver and Mrs. Hurd on maximizing that 1.3 million. It is not sufficient to purchase 400 devices outright. We're just a little bit short, a couple $100,000. So we think through leasing and purchasing, we can maximize those funds though, and then assume maybe the last payment of the lease into the district budget between Mr. Ganesh and Mr. Grant. So just some thoughts for you. So I am open to what questions, thoughts, concerns you may have. Over there.
Thank you. And thank you for fleshing out some of that. I have some questions. So I am very supportive of the interactive boards, but in education committee, I just want to make sure that I heard administrators in the high school, both middle schools, and this was presented as an option. What I heard were seemed very interested in doing more community school involvement, trying to flesh out some other options. Well, I heard, I could hear them latch on to, that sounds great, let's move forward. So I'm just sharing that, and I understand that we do all those other things, but it was powerful for me to hear what the administrators that are actually in the buildings with the students and the effects of COVID, how socially the students have been impacted. So I don't know if anybody else wants to have a discussion, but I just heard a lot of concerns and some different thoughts.
And I appreciate you bringing them up and prompting questions ahead of time, because you noticed the slides, I added a couple of things to just for the benefit of everybody. I think we certainly agree with the social emotional needs of our students returning. We're very hopeful with the additional counselors and the social worker reassignment that will certainly add to things. You used a great word, flush it out. I think that we would really need to work with our administrative team to get more details, because while we heard ideas, I don't think we got to the details of what does that mean. We maybe talked about after school programming, but then we also heard what are the students that we need to reach when it comes to after school programming. So I think we need to flesh through that. We did talk administratively today, maybe do we take a portion of ESSER 3 and just allocate it for mental health resources? And that gives us some time to flesh it out. We can spend the money over the next 3 years, so we don't have to have all the answers now, but we could, should the board want us to, put in allocations for the mental health resources. It would reduce the amount for interactive panels, and then we would work together to figure out, well, how do we fund that?
I mean, I guess that's really the question is, how do we hear what administrators who are on the ground in the building with the students, so we hear their concerns, and how do we balance that? Then we're also hearing from the administration, which, you know, who can deny that having these interactive boards in the classroom, which would be a benefit for many years to come. So I'm just struggling personally with hearing both of those, and I don't, in my mind, there wasn't a next step. So we had a short discussion, and then we were presented as a board that this is where we want to do. But I don't know if anybody else in education wants to speak to it, and if not, I'm fine.
Well, I'm not on the education committee, so I am actually very grateful that you brought that up, because I find that very interesting to know that our principals have other thoughts and ideas for how to use the funds to support mental and emotional wellness. And I think it's very exciting to look at the whiteboards and all the different features and benefits that they have. They certainly seem like something that is nice to have. I am surprised to see the large chunk of money being dedicated to that. Especially if other ideas are being brought forward. I'd be interested in knowing more about how principals think these monies could be used to support transformational needs. And, you know, just the thought that we had is we've talked a lot about activity fees and how we can act as a barrier for participation in extracurriculars. And, you know, that's a structure that we need to look at. So, you know, maybe these monies could be used to help offset that over the next couple of years. Maybe, if that's our 2024, so maybe we can help offset those costs using these funds, or maybe, you know, and I'm sure the principals have a lot more ideas, but I'd like to know what those ideas are before we consider them.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I feel like these would be fantastic tools, but when I've sat in on trainings about the ESSER funds and the use of them, this was never something that came to my mind. And then hearing other school boards talking about it seems like this money should go more towards lost instruction time. I know a lot of school districts are needing to use it for upgrading their buildings. We seem fortunate that we don't have to do that. But there had been talk about you can use it for transportation, so to have those after-school programs and to pay for a late bus. So I think my mind was more thinking academically how we're going to reach those kids that haven't, that lost so much time. So I do think I would want to hear more from teachers and administrators who are there and what they're seeing we need, and not commit so quickly to such a large portion of it being for technology. I know we've put a lot of money into Chromebooks lately, which have been great, and obviously we needed them for this past year. But this wasn't what was in my mind as ESSER grant money has been talked about. Kind of reading the Department of Ed facts, you know, it says it should respond to the impacts COVID-19 has had on students. I'm not really sure how this does that. And then going back to staffing, I have real concerns about our middle school staffing. That 28 number in 7th grade, it to me is unacceptable. Because it's an average of 28, which means there's going to be classrooms that have 32 in them for a period. And that's, as we have students that have missed so much instructional time, that to me is unacceptable. I know that these teachers want to stick with their teams of 4, but we can't do that to the detriment of these kids.
Thank you, Mrs. Evans. And I really appreciate you bringing back to that, because I did forget to mention one thing that would be very crucial. We are keeping a very close eye on the 7th grade numbers. We agree that they are higher than we would like them to be. I should point out we do have 2 part-time positions, a math and a science position, and a full-time ELA position that we have actually reallocated or reassigned per se moving into next year, but they will split time in the 2 buildings. So that's not reflected in this chart. I can think about how I would reflect that. But the English teacher will be able to have 2 sections at West and 2 sections at East, both for ELA in 7th grade. The math would have 1 section of each, and the science would have 1 section. So we actually end up with 10 sections of the ELA and 9 sections of the math and the science. It's the social studies that we don't have a certified additional teacher to be able to split across that. So let me, before the memo on Wednesday, I can think about how to calculate that and show that to you. We did have those staff that, based upon some of our reassignments, that we were able to help at least alleviate some of the 7th grade. Certainly doesn't impact social studies. And our special areas are spread out a little bit more because of the number of specials that we have. So these are not numbers that reflect that. But I appreciate you bringing it up because I just didn't get to mention it here. But we are aware we have allocated each of those staff that I just mentioned to support the 7th grade there. I'll think about how we can put that in the memo.
Thank you.
Mrs. White?
Thank you. I am part of the education committee, so to Mrs. Mayor's point, there were a lot of ideas thrown around, and I know that this one, again, is the largest and most ambitious with the projection, with the panels rather. I think that my concern overall about an implementation of this scale is similar to that of the staffing positions that we're allocating with this money. And we had talked about the fact that in future years, through attritions and things like that, we'd be able to cover salaries going forward. But this would be the bridge to get us there for the staffing piece of it. But I think that my concern with the implementation of and the rollout of 400 of these, I feel like there would be additional costs above and beyond just the actual devices by way of training, installation. Installation for this amount of electronics would be really, I think, very substantial. And I don't know that that was factored in. You can confirm or deny. I don't know if it was or not, but having installed media like this in a corporate setting, I think that, I would imagine it to be tens of thousands of dollars to install this number of boards across our buildings. So, that's money not factored in here. So, to Ms. Mayor's point, I just think that as nice as it would be to do all of this at once and bring us forward, I appreciate the pitch for that. I think that there may be more practical ways to provide updated technology resources to students that are really in need of them. I don't know what we're doing in terms of like internet and hotspots for families that maybe can't afford that type of thing, to help continue that in a way that they think would, help close the gap in those areas. That's all.
I can speak in that, if you want to add anything. So we were really looking for, some additional input from the board tonight we do have kind of estimated quotes that Mr. Ganesh and staff have been working on. We've estimated each device at around $4,000. We have talked about installation and the idea of installing here in district with our own staff. We have technology staff. We would certainly work with Mr. Cummer to see how we could identify our own staff. We would really need to have an idea of how many we may be purchasing, because I think at a scale of this size, we will get a price break depending upon the number. So there was definitely some sliding scale, if you want to say, but we did think about all of those pieces in that. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Mr. Ganesh.
So for professional development is included in the cost that we budgeted for. And again, installation, we are planning to install this internally. You're right, the installation cost we went through the vendor is substantial. What if you $1,400? So that's something that we are trying to avoid and have it installed by our own staff. It's basically a small kind of thing. And going back to your point about the Wi-Fi hotspots, so recently we did apply for a grant with T-Mobile and got 250 T-Mobile hotspots to give for our family. We have 80 hotspots that we have already out. We have further 170 more hotspots that we can next school year comes in. And more families need that service. We have 170 hotspots that we can further develop.
you have given us a lot to think about, and I appreciate the conversation. That was really why we wanted to have a conversation this evening. We will go back and certainly think about how maybe we could revise or what to bring back to you next. We have an administrative retreat coming up where we could certainly talk about this and how we might use that to try to get more definitive ideas from some of our administrators as to some of the things that maybe they need to. So I will confer with Dr. Russell, and we will hear an update, and then I'll get back to you with some other ideas. Is that okay?
What is the date that the decision has to be made by?
So I don't know that we actually, TDE, we are still waiting for a lot of information from them on some of the requirements that will go along with the grant. I think one of our thoughts was the earlier that we can have the allocations at least approved. It is open in e-grants for us to begin to work on our application and to submit it. But we were thinking the earlier that we can get out with that, if we can get ahead of the game for anything that we are ordering, we don't want to be in the same position we were with our Chromebooks, where everybody is ordering it and now it's backlogged. So I don't know, I will defer if Mr. Leader or Dr. Russell or Mr. Supers know a deadline. I have not heard a deadline and seen those shaking. So
because it's a 3-year grant too. So is there a requirement to have all that decided in year 1, or we can use a portion of it now and then see where the needs of our students really are to discuss what to use it?
Question. When we submit a grant, like even Title 1, 2, and 4, you do have to indicate allocations. I don't necessarily have to put specifically interactive boards at this exact cost, but I have to put in $1.2 million for interactive panel. So, and then what account codes that associates with, and then the justification for it. You do have opportunity to adjust. Sometimes our allocation goes up, sometimes it goes down, and I think they recognize since this is the way we can spend it on, we may need to go in often and adjust what we maybe had thought we would spend it on. I'm seeing some head shaking, so I hope that I'm not misleading, but that would be my understanding. Mr. Weaver, do you want to add something?
Yeah, and I just like to add, hopefully this is loud enough for everybody, that, the guidance that will come from PD will dictate how these funds will be spent. Clearly, we can spend them over 3 years. We just don't know how to do that because of the qualification, as Mr. Super said, that we have to have a public comment period open with the plan for 30 days. And then the board has to approve it. We don't know what that deadline date is. We don't know what the template is going to look like. Once we know what that will look like, it may say, here is the project, and then here is the spending over the next 3 fiscal years. We just have to fill in those numbers. That might make it more simple. So hopefully that guidance from PD will come shortly. I know the MCIU people, Sandy Edling, is just ready to retire. It was promised at some point in time in the middle of May, the beginning of June. It's now June 7th, and we still don't have it. So we will share that.
I would note that ARP Easter guidebook that was issued, that does say that schools are encouraged to apply by September 30, 2021. Not a hard deadline, but they're encouraging you to do that.
Any other questions for me on any of the topics this evening? Thank you again. I greatly appreciate the feedback.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Moving on to section 4.02, the June 2021 enrollment report. We did just talk about enrollments for next year. I don't know if there's anything we need to discuss for June.
I don't think there's anything to add.
Okay.
From my standpoint.
Okay, so then moving on. Item 4.03, action is requested. The motion will be to approve 444 students eligible to graduate from Perkiomen Valley High School on June 11th, 2021 as listed, contingent upon their satisfactory completion of the graduate requirements, and I so move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have some graduates.
More than some. Item 4.04, action is also requested tonight. The motion will be to approve the Athletic Health and Safety Plan, version 10, for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year as presented. So there are 3 revisions that are highlighted, and I move to approve the plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions?
I would, if I may, Mrs. Evans Brackett, I would like to point something out. And Mrs. Lewis is here in the audience, and she has really been helpful in developing some of the medical and CDC recommendations and the guidelines, those aspects of these plans. And there's a statement in number 2 here in the second line of this table. If sustained 6 feet of distancing can be maintained, face coverings may be removed when outdoors, for example, when running a race during track and field practice or competition, or when spectating. And I wanted to be sure, Mrs. Lewis, that we had also incorporated that there were recent questions about students who might be outside waiting for a bus in some of the very warm weather. Are we comfortable with them not wearing masks outdoors? That's really the question. So it sort of aligns to this statement right here. We would have to maintain that social distance among our students. However, as the temperatures get higher, it's becoming a little bit less, less comfortable. They've been great. They have really been resilient with their masks. However, I wonder if we can be comfortable with that. Any questions on that? Question?
No, it sounds perfectly reasonable to me, and all the data that I read on this stuff, that when you're outdoors, essentially you're in dispersion. Really safe to do that, but so indoors, we need to maintain masking. Maybe end of the school year, but I'm much more comfortable with people doing that outdoors.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yes, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item 4.05, another action item. The recommended action is a motion to approve the Health and Safety Plan version 18A for the 2020-2021 school year as presented. So there are quite a few revisions here, but I will make the motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4.06, the recommended action will be a motion to approve the expiration of the Health and Safety Plan version 18A on June 22nd, 2021. Any comments or questions? So can we move that to consent? Item 4.07, the recommended action will be a motion to approve the Health and Safety Plan for extended school year and summer programming for the time period June 26th, August 13th, 2021. Any comments or questions? You comfortable moving that to consent? Okay. Item 4.08. The recommended action will be a motion to approve a contract with the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit to continue participating in the virtual high school EHS program for up to 40 seats for 1 year beginning July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022 at a cost of $5,700 with the potential for purchasing additional seats at a cost of $265 per seat. Any questions or comments? We'll move that to consent. Item 4.09, the recommended action will be the motion to approve the purchase Newsella digital simulations as a supplemental resource for 6 through 12 social studies in the amount of $64,800 for a 6-year digital subscription as recommended by the Education Committee. Any comments or questions? Okay, we'll move that to consent. Item 4.10. The recommended action will be a motion to approve the curriculum guide updates for financial literacy, replacing personal finance, art exploration, Genius Bar, grade 8 social studies, and grade 9 social studies as presented at the May 3rd, 2021 board meeting. Any comments or questions? We'll move that to consent. Item 4.11, the recommended action will be a motion for the approval to purchase HMH Science as a resource for Earth systems and biology in the amount of $82,510.63 for a 6-year digital subscription and a class set of hard copy text for each classroom as recommended by the Education Committee. The purchase will be supported with 2021-2022 Ready to Learn grant funds. Any comments or questions? Okay, we'll move to consent. Item 4.12, the recommended action will be a motion to approve a field trip, the senior class trip for March 2022, as reviewed and forwarded by building principals and district administration. Any comments or questions? Okay, we'll also move that to consent. Item 4.13, the recommended action is the motion to approve the proposed allocations for the ESSER 3 emergency elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds as presented. Given our discussion, I believe we'll leave this off consent. Any other comments or questions about this item? And then item 4.14, the recommended action will be a motion to approve the adjusted allocations for the ESSER 2 funds as presented. Again, the interactive panels are on this, so I believe we need to leave it off of consent. Okay. If there are no other comments or questions, then that concludes my section.
Thank you, Dr. Kolar. Moving on to section 5, business, Mr. Dorr, please.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons Brackett, section 5.01. Excuse me, Mr. Weaver, the district finance update, please.
Everybody. So we have sort of a quick finance update that will help set us up for.
I think you're on.
You're not on? Good, okay. Thank you. So tonight's finance update will focus in on one final piece of the general fund budget puzzle, which is associated with our summer employees and the hourly rate that they are being paid. And then that will spill into our final general fund budget discussion set up for next week, which we've made significant progress on over the past couple of months. So that's a couple of final steps to get to the finish line, as Dr. Russell mentioned earlier. And then we have some other projects that we'd like to bring the school board up to date on. And then we have a quick hitter with a memorandum of understanding associated with our teachers union. So summer employees, we have officially appointed the summer employees at $10 an hour over the past couple of months. We've built our supply of summer workers for the custodial, the maintenance, and the technology departments. We have recommended at a most recent finance committee meeting to pay those individuals instead of $10, $14 an hour. There was good discussion at the finance committee in regards to that. Do we need to do that? Do we have a staffing shortfall? That is the impetus and the push to get to the $14. So we pulled that recommendation back. And I did work with Mr. Moran to make sure that we have significant supply of staff and that we should be able to meet our quota in the summertime. I'm happy to report that we will and we expect to be fully staffed with our 20 summer workers by June 14th board meeting next week. We continue with interviews. We have previously approved 6 in May. We are approving another group tonight, or setting it up for tonight. And then we also have already filled our allotment and our quota for technology with 8 personnel split. Instead of the 4 positions, there'll be working 8 positions working half. So I'm happy to report that, and because of that report out to the board, the recommendation now is that we would pay the summer workers, because there's no hurry part on our end to fill that at the $14 an hour. We recommend $12 an hour. That reflects somewhere in the middle. Instead of the $10 an hour, it's a little bit of a bump.
However, it's not at the $14 an hour because we've now ascertained that it's not that much of an urgency for us to pay the $14 an hour. Remember, the big push for the $14 an hour was because of the competition of our students going elsewhere, working in other private industries that are paying higher values. However, we have the supply and the quota of summer employees on hand, and we feel comfortable with that. The $14 an hour was already worked into the budget. So right now we sit on the heavy side at $14 an hour at the $28,000 that you'll see in the interactive in the next couple of slides. So we're conservative with that. So whatever we determine from this point on, we're covered in the budget. So again, we would recommend the $12 an hour as a perfect middle of the road. We would go back and we would grant an extra $2 an hour for those summer employees we've already hired at $10 an hour. And moving forward, next week, we'll hire the other batch, the final batch of summer workers at $12 an hour as well. Any questions or concerns about that approach? Mrs. Walker.
So, Mr. Weaver, if we've already have 16 of the positions filled at $10 an hour, then I guess I'm just wondering why the adjustment at all.
So that's a good question. I think it's been part of how we've been doing business this summer, approaching and recognizing the fact that these employees, these workers are here, and the push and the understanding from my understanding of that was that we would go back and seriously consider if we had to go to $14 an hour. So you don't necessarily have to, that's a good question. But from a budgetary perspective and a discussion tonight, the recommendation would be to go to $12 an hour.
And I guess my question is, I'm looking forward to the next slide and looking to see that we still don't have all of our staffing filled for our summer educational programming. And I'm just wondering why we're not, those are things that we're required to provide. So I'm wondering why we're not.
Sure. So that's a really good point, and that's why we broke it down this way. So the summer employees it's over and above our process. This other part associated with, this other portion of this, with the LIFT program, the ESY program, and working with Mr. Moran. Mr. Moran, if you would like to give an update, I mean, I can certainly read the fact that we have some positions that we need to fill, and that's where the concern is, Mrs. Paul. The fact that we are struggling, and that's a whole other hourly scale. This is not the $14 an hour. This is the $35, $40 an hour discussion. And we are still struggling to fill some of those positions. And that was part of the Brian, yes, Mr. Moran.
I could just add, I mean, as far as these positions go, I mean, we have current candidates and we are completing the interview process. So we're confident that we will fill these positions under the LIFT side. ESY, we do have 2 paraprofessional positions that are needed to support the students who are going to the IU program. So we'll be working with the IU to establish staffing for those positions. And these positions, they've already raised the hourly rate for those positions to attract candidates.
So again, 2 different slides, great point, and it's open for discussion. My point is that it's in the budget at the $14 an hour, so we have some flexibility to adjust that, however the conversation goes on the business. My recommendation as the business administrator is to go to the $12 an hour for the summer employees. And certainly discuss that. Any questions or concerns? Dr. Cole.
Yeah, so I'm curious why your recommendation is to go to $12 an hour if we have filled them at 10, and then what does that mean for next summer? Then are we going to be at 12 plus moving forward?
Well, so yes, that's the thinking, and the thinking is that the private industries are already offering $14, $15, $17 an hour. They're also not going to go back. Those numbers there will stay. So our competition in future years will continue to be the same. So we can work it into the budget now, which we have it in there, and then we are prepared moving forward and reflecting the fact that $10 an hour you might not be able to fill those in the future.
And it's gonna feel like a bigger hit if we have to make up $5 as opposed to 2 or 3.
Well, perhaps, and like this $10 an hour has been set for quite a while. And really, it helps us out moving forward for the future budget, a little bit, yes. Mr. Murray.
If I could, I mean, the original thought also was that our substitute rate was raised to $14 an hour this year. So when we were thinking ahead for summer planning, the recommendation was to make that $14, to be in line with the sub rate. Knowing that the constraints that we may have on the budget, when Mr. Weaver and I looked at that, we knew we already secured our candidates. We did consider moving that back to $12. But the original thought was around alignment with our sub rate at $14.
Yeah, I think that's just where the disconnect is happening, because it's kind of been presented as we need to raise the rate in order to hire, but we've actually already hired. So it's more of, we need to raise the rate because we haven't in so long, and $12 is more of what is comparable with what's going on right now. So I think that's where for me, the trouble was, because we've already hired them. Why are we now going to pay them more? So,
Of course, when we began that discussion in May, we only had 6 that we knew we were hiring, and Mr. Moran and his staff continued to interview. So it's a little bit different than when we had the finance committee on May 20th. But my effort was to recommend the $12 an hour and to keep it moving along, and to let the board know that we already got the $14 an hour in our 1.43% tax increase that you see next slide. We can figure that out next week. That's perfectly good. Let us know, or unless Mrs. Evans Rocket, you'd like to try to wrap it up.
I'm comfortable with splitting the difference of $12 an hour. So if anyone else wants to give guidance to Mr. Weaver, so we have a budget for next week.
I mean, I see Julie's point, and Dr. Kohler's point. I think we did the finance committee, we thought 12 was to attract talent, so we weren't going to be able to attract. I mean, in fact, we're already hired, but I do understand the jump from 12 to 14 versus 10 to 14. I'm fine with being 12.
When we originally went out, we really thought we were going to be desperate for bodies, and all the local businesses. I mean, Walmart finally started paying $15 an hour because they needed people. And of course, the kind of places we were competing with. So,
Thank you, Dr.
Do we know what other districts are paying for the same type of work? I mean, what's comparative to other schools around us?
That's a good question, Mr. Moran. I don't know if you know. I don't.
I don't have that information for summer employment. I know we did some comparisons, obviously, for curricular rate and summer programs like Lift and Apply, but we can get that information as far as what other districts are paying if they employ individuals like we are, for the summer.
I mean, maybe just not to spend a ton of time on it, but I think it would be helpful for me to make my decision. Thank you.
So if you have that for the memo, and then board members can respond where they are. So
Absolutely.
we give you guidance for next week.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
It's my understanding that there were a lot of people turned away too at the $10 rate. Is that correct? That we had a lot more applicants from positions?
That I don't know. Is that correct?
We did have more applicants, especially for custodial maintenance, than we were able to employ. That's correct. Now, some of those applicants, typically we would have also food service workers that would come over. 3 to 4 individuals would work for summer for the custodial maintenance. They have not this year, so we will be going back. I know Mr. Clemmer is going back and pulling from those applications additional individuals to make up those 4.
Yeah, that was another piece of the puzzle. The ones we're all laying it out here is that, the food service workers that typically come over in the summertime, it's been a long year for them as well. And in anticipation of that, we thought that was another conversation as well. Okay, so we'll get that up in the Thursday memo and move on from there. Thank you. Okay, additionally, as part of the conversation, and again, if the $12 an hour is up for discussion, carrying that forward for tonight's presentation, we know that Mr. Dinesh has been interested in working with some special needs students, and is requesting that part of that happen with the special needs students, and they also get paid a certain hourly rate. Again, based upon the recommendation from the previous slide that I had, at $12 an hour, this would be the same $12 an hour as well. And Mr. Nash, I don't know if you'd like to add anything about what those special needs students would be doing.
Sure, so we have a bunch of summer classes, one of the classes is kind of recertified almost, especially would be their enrolling and kind of recognition of almost and quality checking them, some technology repairs, and some hands-on items with technology.
Any questions in regard to that? That would be newer, and that would be a nice program for us.
And as of today, I have only one student interested.
I will tie those two rates together. Okay, another piece of this puzzle is videographers for school board meetings. We have an estimate based on, again, another $12 an hour recommendation. We have 24 meetings. Those roughly 24 meetings a year, 23 actually, I guess, up for July. And so in doing so, we would estimate total cost for these two videographers for our school board meetings to cost $1,728. With FICA included, it would be $1,860. Again, that it's already in the proposed budget if the recommendation for the $12 stays. So we were at 14, and we go to 12, that makes room for us to put these other programs in. All right. I appreciate the patience on that. Also, a whole bunch of tiny numbers. I'd like to point out where we stand for heading into final budget approval. We have several June adjustments that we did talk about at the Finance Committee, specifically some big numbers for EIT growth, real estate transfer taxes, interim real estate taxes. We have a deduction for the student activities that we're removing for next year, and revenue offset associated with the salary adjustments down here for what, between the 122,000 and 27,559. Other adjustments on the expenditure side, the recognition of the ABC contract that was reviewed and hopefully will be approved tonight or next Monday night. We'll have the contract for the waste, recycling, and trash, the 3-year bids for the MCIU. And we'll have a final piece of the insurance puzzle that we had to add, mainly associated with the cyber insurance adjustments that we requested as part of our conversation with technology. When you compare the revenues of $112,922 to the expenditures of $160,956, the shortfall is $4,033,000. We have approved uses of various fund balances, $2,967,000. Our shortfall is $1,066,546, which means our tax increase is sitting at a 1.43% increase. The Finance Committee did say that somewhere between 1.43 and 1.50 is acceptable. And at this point in time, I would recommend the 1.43 simply because we have yet to have our state monies through the state budget. So that's sitting there, and that will eventually come to us. I know Mrs. Evans Brockett said Senate Bill 1 was pulled up as part of the omnibus budget process. That's going to take a while. We were hopeful that it would come together and kind of run forward, but it looks like it's going to take a while because there are a few different plans at this point in time in the county, which might not be unusual, but it's a little disconcerting for us. So we sit at the 1.43% tonight, and I would recommend that for next week, just to keep the flow going. Regardless of the conversation on the 10, the 14, and the $12 an hour, it all sits here in this 27,559, and that represents $14 an hour. So if we go less than the $14 an hour, okay, we're good. At the $14 an hour, we're fine as well. But again, the recommendation would be $12 an hour. Okay? So we're kind of buttressed to Any questions on that? Because next week is the big show, and we have to get that approved, then move forward. Any questions or concerns? Everybody okay with it? Right. Thank you. Another piece of that puzzle is, of course, our fund balances and where we sit. Over the past couple of years, you can see how we've grown in some areas. And that's a significant portion of why we're confident going out with 1.43%. Okay, any questions on fund balances? We will have an updated projection for Monday night, for next Monday night, just as a further proof to that, just to set that in concrete. Okay, lower field system. Mr. Ganesh and Mr. Felty have been working on this for quite some time. We have an estimated cost of $6,261 for the equipment. And Mr. Ganesh went back to see what the cost would be for the installation. He's still working on that, unfortunately. Just taking us a little bit of time. We do anticipate by next Monday we'll have that item with the installation. We do not expect that to be a significant dollar increase. As a matter of fact, it's probably less than $8,000 total combined with the equipment and the installation. It's a one-day job, but that's still out there, and we will be using capital project funds for that. Any questions on that one? Okay, the big item for technology tonight has been the high school audiovisual projects. We've got some pretty good ones in the high school auditorium. We've got a pretty neat one with the TV wall and the video wall, the cafeteria. And the estimated cost for these both projects is $45,000. We are planning on utilizing some refunded, some dollars coming back to us for expired equipment that we're selling. We're taking off of our rolls of about $4,670 as a match against that, and then we have monies in our technology budget associated to help offset that as funding as it currently stands. Okay, one final piece of this puzzle for tonight, compensatory education services. We have a memorandum of understanding with PDEA, and they're basically and essentially recognizes the fact that we are struggling in some of those areas, and so we have to hire at $40 an hour for some of those staff in those real educational-based programs where we need certified teachers. And that's part of the MOU up for discussion a little bit later. And that is all. I do have a summary of the COVID grants. I do know Mrs. Smith hit this. We did receive recognition from PDE that we have our allotment for the SR2 grant was increased, so that's a good thing. And everything else stays the same. It's the whole nugget of where we're at with all of our COVID grants and how we get driving it. Just getting it on record. And that's it. That's all I have for you. If you have any questions, please let me know. Again, next Monday night, we're going to all go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Section 5.02, reports on grants and donations. We have one grant, the amount of $10,374.41.
Thank you.
Giant Feeding School Kids Program. Section 5.03. There be a motion to approve the extended school year contracts for summer 2021 to meet requirements of student IEPs. Any questions? Consent, please. 5.04. Motion to approve a settlement agreement and release number 304805 in lieu of pay as recommended by solicitor. Any questions? With that consent, please. 5.05, motion to approve the Student All Sports Insurance Program for the 2021-2022 school year with Access Insurance Company as planned by CBIZ Benefits and Insurance Services at a total cost to the district of $10,047. Any questions? Could you move that consent, please? 5.06, the motion to approve the voluntary school student accident insurance program for the 2021-2022 year with Access Insurance Company as planned by CBIZ Benefits and Insurance Services at no cost to the district as recommended by the Finance Committee. Any questions? Please.
5.01, a motion to approve a contract extension with Advanced Protection Company in Norristown, PA, to provide security services as provided for an additional 3 years, beginning July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2024, at a cost of $500,160 for the first year, and a 2.5% and 2.47% increase for the second and third years respectively, as recommended by the Finance Committee. Any questions? Move that to consent, please. 5.08, motion to approve a 3-year trash removal and recycling contract with Waste Management, Inc., effective 2021 through 2022, through 2023 and 24, as provided through the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit Procurement Group at a cost of $166,112.76, or $55,370 a year, as recommended by the Finance Committee. Any questions? That consent, please. 5.09, motion to approve Mr. Ryan Moran as a management trustee of Bucks and Montgomery County Schools Healthcare Consortium beginning July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2023. Questions? Move that consent, please. 5.10, motion to exonerate a Montgomery County Planning Commission parcel for school taxes effective July 1, 2020, and to be fully exempt from any further real estate taxes for parcel number 20-00-0376-00-9 Park Avenue, as recommended by the Finance Committee. Any questions? Please. 5.11, the motion to renew Fox Rothschild LLC as district solicitor to include special education, student services, and all legal matters related to district operations in accordance with their fee agreements effective July 1, 2022. Any questions? Move that consent, please. 5.12, motion to approve Reed Smith LLP for legal services for matters pertaining to insurance. Any questions? Move that consent, please. 5.13, motion to approve the purchase of a wrestling mat from Resolite at CoStar's cost not to exceed $14,116.86, as recommended by the Safety and Appropriations. Questions? Consent, please. 5.14, motion to approve the removal of existing carpet and installation of LVP flooring by Franklin Flooring. Removal and installation will occur on the second floor and in the library of Schwintzville Elementary School at a CoStar's cost not to exceed $112,528, as recommended by the Safety and Operations. Questions? Consent, please. 5.15, motion to approve removal of existing carpet and installation of LVT flooring by Franklin Flooring. Removal and installation will occur on the second floor of the library at Skippack Elementary at a CoStar's cost not to exceed $212,253, as recommended by the Safety and Operations Committee. Costs to be covered by the existing funds from the committed for capital projects. Questions? Consent, please. 5.16, motion to approve Franklin Flooring to remove and replace the carpet in the high school office at a CoStar's cost not to exceed $24,973, as recommended by the Safety and Operations Committee. Costs will be covered with the funds. 5.17, motion to approve DNH Technologies to install a new projector in high school auditorium, a new video wall in high school cafeteria at a cost of $42,626, as recommended by the Finance Committee. Any questions? Please move to consent. 5.18, motion to approve the proposal from Tanner Furniture to perform renovations needed in room IPC1 to offer the high school Viking Genius Bar course at a cost not to exceed $16,263.36, as recommended by the Finance Committee and Education Committee. Any questions? Move that consent, please. Section 5.19, 5.20, 5.21, and 5.22 occurring next week. Madam Vice Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dorr. That brings us to section 6, payment of bills. Dr. Weston, please.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
Item 6.01 and 6.02 will be presented for action next week. And that concludes section 6.
Thank you very much, Dr. Weston. Section 7, professional personnel, Ms. White, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Evans-Brockett. Section 7, items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 are all on consent. Item 1.2 is the approval to create a special education position. The motion is to approve the creation of an additional special education position at the elementary level. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we move to consent. 7.13 is the approval of memo of understanding with PBEA for the curriculum rate code compensatory services. The motion is to approve the memo of understanding with the Curriculum Valley Education Association to modify the curriculum rate to $40 an hour for staff employed in the COVID compensatory services program beginning summer 2021, extending through summer 2022, as discussed in the Finance Committee. Are there any questions? That can move to consent. 7.10, I'm sorry, 7.14 is for next week, and 7.15 is a placeholder. And that is my section.
Thank you, Ms. White. Section 8, support personnel, Mrs. Roberts, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Evans-Brockett. 8.01, 8.02, 8.03, 4, and 5 are all on consent. 8.06 is for approval next week, as is 8.07, and that concludes my section.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Roberts. Section 9, governance, Mrs. Maris, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Evans-Brockett. 9.01, first reading on policies, policies presented for first reading. 339, uncompensated leave. 800.1, electronic signatures and records. Okay, 9.02, motion to hold a second reading and adopt the following policies. Policies 123.3, infection management. Any questions? Any questions? 9.03, the motion is to approve Pennsylvania School Board Association 2021-22 all access membership package plus administrative regulations at a cost of $16,605. Are there any questions? Motion is to appoint. No. You want to take over?
So if there's board members that want to volunteer tonight, or you can email me and we can fill us in for next week.
I volunteer.
Okay. I will volunteer as well. So if there's a third member that we'll fill it in for next week, so we'll leave off at consent.
Okay. So we will do that next week. And that is my question.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mayor. It takes us to section 10, closing items. Item 10.01, comments from the audience. We've really dwindled down here. Mr. Ganesh, do we have any comments from Zoom?
Mrs. Megan? Mrs. Megan, can you please unmute yourself and speak?
No? Okay, so we're not having success with that. So, Mrs. McGinn, if you do have a comment, you can email us and I'll make sure to read it for you next week, which reminds me that there was a comment submitted that I did not read previously from Heather Gottschall in Prattboro. Myself and many others would love to see a motion for lifting the students wearing mask mandate during recess and gym class following the recommendations of the CDC and Montgomery County Health Commissioners. Have a nice weekend. And that was received May 14th, and that has obviously been taken care of already. Item 10.02, are there comments from board members? Seeing none. Item 10.03, the notice of video recording disclaimer. Per policy 006.3, all video recordings are subject to the following disclaimer. The opinions expressed by any members of the public do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of School Directors of Perkiomen Valley School District and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of School Directors of Perkiomen Valley School District hereby expressly disclaims any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public. Any unauthorized rebroadcasting of any video, audio, and/or still image of this meeting is strictly forbidden without the written permission of the Board of School Directors of Perkiomen Valley School District. And prior to adjournment, I will announce that we had executive session prior to tonight's meeting for the purposes of negotiations and personnel. And that adjourns the meeting.
In the Zoom?
Yep.